Right, so good morning to you all. What we're going to be dealing with today is talking about complaints. We don't like them, but unfortunately we get them. They do come up when we least expect them sometimes, and we find them a thorn in our side, and we can actually avoid them. And what we're going to do today is to talk a little bit about how to prepare ourselves at the outset so we don't get as many, and also when we do get them, that we are more prepared to be able to deal with them in a professional manner. So I've got Tom helping me with it today. He's going to be moving the slides on because I can't control from where I am. So he'll be moving the slides on when I ask him. If you have any questions, you could put them in the chat box at the bottom of your screens, or somewhere on your screen, there'll be a chat facility, and you can write in the chat box to each other. But if you've got questions, can you please put them in the Q&A? There's a Q&A box there as well. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A box and we'll answer them as we go through. And we'll also stop at the end and answer more there as well. Carly was supposed to be helping us deliver this, but she's actually dealing with a complaint. She's dealing with a guy who's going through removals procedure with the DVSA at the moment. And so, you know, we have situations where inconveniences take place to us, because Carly was hoping to present this herself, this webinar this morning. And because she's dealing with the tribunal, she's not able to be here at the moment. She's going to join us later though. So I'm going to carry on with this. So if you can move on, please, Tom. We've got some aims and objectives here. You forgive me for looking at two screens here because it's easier for me to do it from two screens. Managing customer complaints and having a best practice response, which is what you ideally need. Policies and procedures, horrible words, policies and procedures, but unfortunately they're very necessary in this day and age. Taking the good from customer complaints and what we can learn from them is a big thing we're going to talk about, and dealing with complaints about you to the DVSA. So when you are complained about, the actions to take, we'll be dealing with that at the end. So you can move on, please, Tom, if you will. And looking at customer complaints. If you get a complaint with your business, it's normally something to do with a misunderstanding or a disconnect, as we call it, between what the customer is expecting to receive and what you're actually giving. So really and truly, we have to set out at the beginning exactly what we intend to deliver. And we have to ensure that understanding has taken place of what is being delivered, and that is what experience the client is expecting to have. Now, a lot of it is unreasonable expectations from the client or incorrect assumptions. And that's if you don't have a terms and conditions system where people are being explained exactly what you're going to be doing, what you're going to be delivering, then you will get a discord. You'll get the unreasonable expectations because they think, well, for the money I'm paying, I should be getting this. We have the problem when we get the phone calls of engaging pupils. The first question you normally get is how much? And they don't worry about paying £40 an hour for a guitar lesson, which they can practice in their bedroom. But when it comes to trying to learn to drive in a learning environment that can go up to 70 miles an hour or beyond, they bark at 20 or 25 pound. But so we do get these unreasonable expectations where people think, well, I should be getting a lot more for my money, because it depends what value they put on the service. So if you are asking for the higher end rate for lessons, perhaps they are going to expect a bit more from you. So you must ensure that if you're going to charge higher rates, that you are very upfront with what's going to be delivered and what's not going to be delivered. And if they want something exceptionally delivered, then you may have to come to some sort of arrangement and possibly even charge more for it. But normally it's something the company's doing wrong as well as complaint. So the company is saying that they'll do this, they'll do the other, and the service falls short. So someone makes a complaint, and it could be a result of mis-selling, or it could be an issue of non-delivery or quality. Now, the problem with quality is something we've got to be careful of, and there is a huge disparity of quality in the ADI industry. Some of it is through experience, some of it is through training, different levels of training that people received, and again, some of it is through expectation, where people have joined the industry and didn't really know what they were joining, to be honest, and expecting something different from it. And therefore they can't deliver what the end user actually wants. And so complaints start to come to the fore. So if we move on, please, Tom. Reputation is a big thing that you need, and goodwill. We don't want to have people slanging off the company that you work so hard to build up. And it's a situation with the day and age where if you have complaints, sometimes those complaints will go online before you hear them. And it might be to the tune of, has anybody had any problems with so-and-so, because I'm getting this, and this, and they haven't even spoken to you. And they are very, very difficult to chase round. We call that negative publicity. And it's very, very difficult and very costly to chase negative publicity. It really is very difficult indeed. So we don't want to be in a situation with reputational damage of having to chase those bad words that have been put out. It's very difficult to get that removed from the internet anyway, once it's been put up there. So again, we're going back to ensuring that if we are able to put out exactly what you will be delivering and the standard and the quality, so people know what to expect from you, the reputational damage will be greatly reduced. These events will not take place so easily. They won't take place so often. And again, how we deal with the complaint, if we deal with it nicely, can actually be remembered more for how it was dealt with than the actual complaint that the complainant made. I can remember a situation a number of years ago. My phone was cut off because workmen were working in the road in Surrey. And when they finished, they closed the cabinet outside on the road. And I went to go, my wife went to go and pick up the phone. The phone didn't work. And I had to go up to the phone box up the road. About 22 years ago this was. Walked up to the phone box up the road to make a complaint. And they said, oh, we can't do anything about it for 11 days. And I said, excuse me, I am a retained firefighter and I need my phone line. And it says with you that my phone will not ever be cut off for any reason, shape or form. Within 25 minutes, my phone was back on again. And that was good service because they never had that engineer who'd been in that box was due to be elsewhere. They stopped him doing that and came back. So that was, I wouldn't say beyond the realms of call and duty because my phone shouldn't have been chopped off in the first place, but they dealt with it very, very quickly indeed. And that's what I remember from that complaint. It wasn't the fact the phone was chopped off, it's the fact that they dealt with it so quickly that I remember. And that has led me to stay with that provider for a very, very long time. So that you can keep stickiness, as we call it, with people if they are happy, even if you do something wrong. If they're happy with how you put it right, they will stay with you, and they could tell 10 others or 20 others, which say, you know, I had a bit of a problem with them, but they looked after me really well. I'd, suggest you go to them. That's the sort of thing you're looking to try to put across to the general public if you can. When you do get it wrong and people walk away, not only do you lose the customer, but you can lose the leads as well that customer could give you through word of mouth. And that's very, very pertinent in the ADI industry where we do rely a lot on word of mouth. So it's not very often that we get a chemistry problem with people in the car and we lose customers. But if we do, you've got to think that I don't want to lose anybody because I can lose the potential leads as well. You don't want to, especially if you're trying to get out of a franchise deal, you don't want to pay the franchise fees and you'd like to get leads coming to you, so you're not paying the franchise deal anymore, then you want to be in a situation where you don't want to lose leads at all. I can see Carly's now joined us.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry, I'm late. I'm hot from a late running tribunal. Not my fault. The judge was late, sadly. But dealing with
it's not your tribunal, Carol.
It wasn't my tribunal. No, I was representing a member, and it was interestingly about a complaint that had been made about the member to the DVSA. So very pertinent. And the other thing I'd jump in on the lost leads thing is, the moment your customer inquires about your product is actually when they start consuming your product or service. It's not when they get in the car with you, it's when they call you for the first time. That's when they start being exposed to your brand and your product. And before that, in terms of what they see of you on social media, what you hold out in your advertising and marketing, all those kind of things. And often customer complaints are at that very embryonic stage, that I contacted the company to inquire about their product and they haven't got back to me in any way, shape or form. And what I always say about that is all that marketing you invest in, all that branding, your number on your car, your social media, your website, your email, all those things that you put out there that are a net designed to capture customers, you then cut a big hole in that net and let those customer fishes swim away by not responding to their initial inquiries. That is a blight of many businesses, big and small, is not either having the capacity to go back to customers because they're very, very busy, or just not responding because of the age, oh, well, my diary's full, I don't need any more new customers at the moment. You might not need those customers now. You will need them in the future at some point. And when you're scrabbling around for customers and go back to some of these people, or they encounter you again, they might just say, nah, not engaging with that company, wasn't impressed with them last time. So don't trigger complaints before you even have them as a customer, because it will lose leads and business for people as well.
Okay, we move on then, Tom.
As Cow has pointed out as well, word of mouth travels fast. You get more negative reviews in a lot of businesses, unless you're positively asking for lots of good reviews and generating them yourself, than you get from negative reviews. And bad news can travel far and wide and at speed, and it can cost a lot of customers because people listen to people, friends listen to friends for recommendations. So if you do see somebody who is out there, what I call indirectly complaining about you, i.e. they have gone to Facebook and they're loudly, slagging off your services, or they're on Twitter, try and get to that main complainant before they can do more damage. Because they're destroying your brand in a way. So it really is important that you deal with them. Try and understand, rather than reach out to them and try and slap them for going out there and talking about your brand in negative connotations. Try and make them understand that the problem is really better resolved directly with you. Twitter can't necessarily do anything other than vote with its feet not to engage with your business. But if that customer wants something done about their specific problem, the person to resolve it really is you, the provider. So politely impressing upon them, it's a little bit detailed with me, and also trying to deal with that problem so they don't continue being basically a toxic thing in your environment as well. So it can lose you both current customers not dealing with a complaint effectively and future customers who see that other complainer complaining. Obviously, when you lose customers, you lose sales, you lose income, and you lose profits. So you can also lose income from complaints, not just by losing the customer, but if you also have to refund them, then you've put what you feel is time and valuable investment of your skills into that person. And then to add insult to injury, you're having to pay them and you're not earning anything for your time and your investment in that person because you're refunding them. One of the other ultimate issues with complaints or outcomes that's very negative for an ADI is when a customer has no satisfaction with you, the provider, they will go to what they see as the industry regulator or ombudsman. And you're consumers yourself, you understand that if you don't have satisfaction with the provider, you may seek to either go to the new unofficial regulator, which is social media, who will regulate your business by making sure people don't come to you, or they will go to regulators and ombudsmen like the DVSA to complain about that particular issue. And sometimes they won't only complain about that issue, then we see issues being embellished because the customer thinks they have to do more sometimes than complain about the core issue. They have to give it a little bit more welly. And we see that problem emerging as well. And lo and behold, what started out as a simple disgruntled customer that wasn't dealt with is suddenly an ADI sitting in a tribunal, trying to appeal the loss of their license and the loss of their livelihood as well. And I know that paints a very fatalistic picture, but it is of the essence of what I've been dealing with this morning and what I've been dealing with in a lot of and not just tribunals, investigations. So customers making malicious complaints about an ADI because for improper behavior because they didn't get a refund. Or the ADI wouldn't deal with their complaint about their, the level of their training not being sufficient to get them through the test. So, it's a vicious world out there, folks, and people can embellish complaints or make malicious complaints because they haven't had their original, potentially more valid complaint dealt with by the ADI. So I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just talking about some of the very real issues that we deal with on behalf of members connected to complaints that have not been handled. Next slide, please, Tom. In many businesses, not just this world, the top triggers for complaints are not going to be necessarily a surprise to you. As I said, you are business people providing products and services, but you're also a customer yourself on many occasions. So some of these will be the ones that you will see happening with other brands. Not keeping promises. If you give a promise, ensure you keep it, or give the customer the real reasons, the pragmatic reasons why you've been unable to keep a promise. We all give promises with the best of intentions and based on the information that we have at the time that we're going to be able to deliver that product or service in the manner we've promised. However, if something has disrupted your delivery of that product, particularly outside forces beyond your the customer know about those issues, and they'll be less likely to complain if they're not communicated at all. Poor customer service is obviously a huge issue for complaints. Rude staff, rude providers, people just not caring. Computer says no kind of face when you're complaining will enrage a lot of customers and trigger further complaints. Not listening to customers, not actually understanding that they've got a feeling, at least, that they should have a right to complain, even if you don't agree with it. It's it's acknowledging that they have a right to have that feeling that they have been aggrieved in some way. Hidden information and costs can often trigger complaints as well. We buy a product, we think it's that value, and then we get told we've got to pay a lot of extras for it, or we need another part for something, or we'll have to pay extra somewhere down the line. Clearly, low quality of products and services triggers quite a lot of complaints for a lot of businesses, and late or non-delivery of goods and services is a huge area of complaint as well. Can we go to the next slide? I don't really want to go into this massive detail because just aware of time right now, but there is a nice little set of customer segmentations that have been done by more the kind of people who work in the psychology side of customer service and marketing, where they've identified types of customer. And have a little read of this in your own time, maybe more so. I'll just pull out a couple for examples. But understanding that customers are different and have different motivations and different ways of complaining will actually help you, as much as understanding why they complain, in understanding who they are and their motivation to complain and how they deal with complaints themselves will help you better deal with each single complaint. So you've got types of customer who is the meat customer. This, as I said, this is not something we've developed. This is something that if you Google it, types of complaint, you'll see lots of different examples of this. They don't clearly state their problem. You actually struggle to get it out of what their real problem is. They may be the customer that actually doesn't actively complain to you, but is still a problem for your business because they just disappear. They go. They don't tell you they're going. They go, and they never darken your door again. But they're out there, meekly as they are, telling other people in conversation that they wouldn't recommend you if your name came up, somebody asked about them. They won't aggressively go after you, but equally they won't tell you why they've been dissatisfied. So those are the kind of people really they're a bit like a ninja complainer. You need to be aware of them. They might not come to you, but you need to know that those people are out there. You might have to draw out the complaint from them. You might actually have to draw out what they want as a resolution to the complaint as well. The aggressive customer is, as they sound, very loud, very clear about their problem. They're going to talk to everybody else. They're going to threaten you. They're going to talk to everybody else if you don't deal it. They can be slightly manipulative about that as well. They will use the threat of exposure to try and get out of you what they want. I think patience is a massive thing with these people. Because they're aggressive, they're probably looking for a fight. If you meet them in combat, it's going to be prolonged combat, and neither of you will profit from that. So the patience and listening skills are needed with that aggressive customer. Don't meet fire with fire with that type of customer. You've got the high roller customer, a premium customer, good customer normally, pays premium prices for your services, probably a good referrer of your services if they get what they want. However, they're demanding. They won't listen to any excuses. They won't accept a deterioration in service. They know they're a premium customer and they should be treated accordingly. Again, these are people who are used to getting what they want and can be slightly aggressive. So it's not a fire it's fire. It's a listen respectfully and get questions to the root of the problem and see what is reasonable to do to neutralize these customers and make them happy. And then we've got a couple more on the next slide. the rip-off customer, we can recognize one of those people. I also call them the continual complainer or the professional complainer. There is a subset of people now that know or suspect or have been told that if you complain about things, normally things, the goods like hotel rooms and restaurants and things like that, you might get comped, as the Americans say. You might get something complimentary or goodwill for complaining, like an upgrade or a free meal, all those kind of things. It's a keep calm situation with this type of complainer. They might not have a valid reason at all. You've got to appear to listen to them, though, because they'll be looking for the fact that you haven't taken their complaint seriously at all to complain about something else then. They won't be happy, though, this type of complainer, unless they get something. And this is the art for you to decide whether you're happy for them to not get something, and that is your principle and you're sticking to it, and you'll worry about whether they're going to go out there and do you any reputational damage as a result of that, but you're going to stick to your guns. Or do you value your reputation more than the principle of not giving these people something? So sometimes is it better to, although you feel like you're giving a con artist something you shouldn't want to in principle, is it worth meeting that person halfway so they feel they've got something out of you without you undermining things for yourself too much, and you still get a tricky customer to deal with, because you just think don't give them anything, but you've got to weigh it up in the balance of what damage they could do. And the chronic complainer, there are customers who will complain whatever you do, and they will never be satisfied. If you give them a solution, they will find a problem with that, and they will find another reason to complain. Again, it's a patience game with them. If satisfied, they could be converted and they will become a good customer and not keep complaining. And they could go on to be your advocate if they feel like they've got what they wanted and they've been listened to. Sometimes chronic complainers are people who just want to be listened to in anything in their lives. Then they're looking for somebody to talk to, not necessarily just to complain. They want to talk to somebody about something and feel their voice is being heard, because it's not being in other worlds. So there's a lot of psychology around this. It's quite fascinating when you delve into these customer types in a bit more detail we're going to do here. And there's some useful guidance and advice that accompanies these breakdowns. If you Google that, that could help you really deal with these different personalities that are at play here as well. With a chronic complainer, rip-off complainer, you always have the option just to not deal with those people at all. Very politely say to them, it seems that we have come to the end of what we can do for you. You seem dissatisfied with services. We've offered solutions. We're not able to agree what is a solution that works for you. I understand if you would like to work with another provider or consume someone else's products, you're free to do so, and you cut your ties with that customer, because otherwise you could lose other valuable time, resource in your life, which is time, dealing with one person who just likes to clog your world up with complaints. So have a look at those types of complainer on the web. How would you want to do customer complaints handling procedure? Then people don't get sick of my voice and complain about that.
Yeah, so Carmen, we're saying, it says here, like it says here, the customer handling procedure, you have to deal with developed policies and procedures for handling these things. It's not sort of thing you can have on the hoof. You need to ensure that this is already in place, and that by having it in place and treating everyone the same, you get a consistency of how people have dealt with, and that becomes a norm. So and also becomes part of your brand, that if you do it properly and you do it professionally, that people will come to you because they know they'll be looked after. So one of the things you must do is listen. You've got to listen, and if you listen, listening itself is probably, I say, the loudest thing that can happen. To be honest, the words that come from the person's mouth are very often not the complaint. If you're there with them in the car and they complain to you, the body language will do more, and you're listening to the body language and to the words. But if there's a phone complaint, you do need to listen carefully to what they're saying to you. And what you must do is thank the customer for bringing the matter to your attention, because if you go blindly on doing something you think is all right and it isn't, and other people are seeing it, 90% of the people won't want to get involved and won't say anything. Only 10% of them will. And you'll think, well, there's only one or two people complaining about it, it must be okay. But if anybody was saying to you about your services, then you do need to take it on board and think, hang on a minute, have a good look at what they've been saying and see if something does need changing. I've been doing a lot of work with Ocado, and one of the guys, the guy who owns it, Tim Steiner, he was in the Grocer magazine last year, which is the trade press for the grocery industry. And I read an interview he had, and one of the questions was, how do you think Ocado has become so successful? And he said, I've made my colleagues who work in this company listen. We've built all of our reputation on the mistakes we made in the past, and that's why we're now efficient. So what he did is he took all the inefficiencies that were in the complaints and changed it to efficiency. So it was brought to his attention, he listened and got everyone else to listen, and they acted. If it was necessary to act on it, they acted on it in the correct way. But they recorded the complaint. So everybody got to see what the complaint was, and then they could put their input to it as well. So go through the complaint in detail and understand exactly what the problem is. It's no point surmising what you think the problem is. You've got to understand what that problem is completely. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to produce a solution that is required and people to think they're not being heard. So if you have a central place where you can put these, if you're a franchisor and you've got people who are driving for you, you've got cars that are out on the road for you, you want to have a place where all the complaints that go to your office from any of your instructors, you want to make sure you've got them in a central place where they can be logged and they can be looked at again. Okay, it helps to identify any trends, wrong trends that could be taking either in your business or actually in the industry where people's expectations are actually changing.
I'd say as well that, you know, I know you guys think you're in a highly regulated industry, but obviously there are industries that are much more regulated, like financial services and the medical arena than ours. And recording of complaints is absolutely essential and has to be complied with for regulation. So if a bank does not record your complaint and there's no record of it at all, that can count against them in the regulator's eyes in any disputes as well. And if they don't have a complaint recording or a complaints handling procedure at any point, which is almost unheard of now in things like financial services or the medical arena, that will be something they would be investigated and probably fined by a regulator for.
Okay, so when you get your complaints and you're handling it, make sure you get all the facts. So if somebody's telling you what's going on, it does actually pay to sometimes repeat what's being said or paraphrase what's being said to you. And so you have the full understanding of what the complaint actually is and you've got it in the correct context. That's also a great help to anybody who's trying to complain. Again, it makes them feel that they're being listened to. And discuss. It's got to be an open discussion with the people. It can't be a one-way thing. You're going to have this because that's all we've got. Try and have a discussion with them to find out what the response of what they're trying to seek. It could be very easy to fix in many instances. It could be, as it says here, like a repair, replacement, refund. It could even be simply an apology where someone has sent some information out that's wrong that they shouldn't have sent out. That's easy to apologize for and correct. But also, when you're trying to fix the problem according to how reasonable the complaint is. There's no point being in a situation where you promise the earth to somebody to try and fix something just to get them off the phone and get them out of your hair, because whatever you promise, they're likely to hold you to. So the request must be reasonable, and whatever your response is ought to be reasonable for the complaint that you're actually taking as well. But act as soon as you can on it. That's one thing. We're all time pressured now. The kids are growing up in an area of technology where everything's got to be done now. So therefore, you need to act as quickly as you reasonably can, but don't do it in a way where you are being a bit foolhardy with it and just thinking on your feet, well, I'll do that. Try and think it through, but think it through reasonably and give a reasonable time response. And what you can do, which is a good way of doing this, although you're going to act quickly, say, right, I'm going to go away and see what we can do for you, and I'll come back to you by. Make sure either you get back by that time or you get back before. It's no good going back after trying to fix it and going back late.
Yeah, give people a timescale and expectation when the complaint will be resolved. I think an important thing about any complaints procedure is, as Howard said at the top of this, write it down, map it out in some way. And the good thing about that then is, you've got a record of the fact that you have this policy. You should then look to see whether you should put it into your T&C. So you are a warning or communicate to customers up front what the complaint procedure is, or at least have it on your website. I'd also make sure that employees or franchisees were aware and following the complaints handling procedure for your franchise, if you're a franchisor. And it's also sometimes useful to take that and put it into a customer facing mode. So make it into some kind of customer charter that if ever you have a problem with me, you can expect as a bare minimum that I will listen, understand, record, investigate, and attempt to resolve the situation. That is, good companies make it clear how well they handle complaints, and they make a commitment to the customer that in selling you this product, if you've got a problem with it, we will work hard to resolve it, and here's the resolution if we're unable to, to resolve it ourselves.
Brings you on to keeping your promises, really, doesn't it? I mean, you keep them informed. If you can keep them informed and keep them informed in the timescale you say you're going to do it, then it's going to be, it won't be a win-win, but it's going to help that person to be sticky to you if you can resolve the problem and they're happy with the way you're doing it. What you can't do is promise what you can't deliver, but also follow up anything you say that you're going to do. If you say you're going to get back to them with something, you must follow up. And even after the complaint's been finished and it's all, you've all gone your separate ways and everything's all happy, there's no harm in following up and saying, is everything still okay? Don't be afraid to do that. Come back to them again. And that will encourage feedback, if you can, for anything. So when your students are finished with your training, don't be afraid to ask them to feedback what they felt. It could be questions on there like, did you feel that I was training to your preferred learning style? Were you able to express how you felt about your training? These sort of things are things you need to know, because that's how you're being monitored in your standards check. So you need to make sure that this very important aspect of your livelihood is being done right. And the only way you're going to find out is the people who are on the receiving end. So you've got to ask these people, really. So follow up feedback forms are really quite a good thing to use, but don't make them full of questions. Just do 5 or 6 questions that can be useful information to you that isn't going to take them very long to fill in. So another thing about complaints, if you're trying to follow up things, if you make it too onerous, then again, you can start putting a bad taste back in their mouth again.
Yeah, and make sure people know where they can complain, because I have a particular bugbear with organizations, particularly online, that actually make it very hard for you to complain. So you can buy products off them. They've got a brilliant process for you to be able to give them money. But when you come to complain about the process, you can't get hold of them. And that will make you the silent killer, the customer that never buys from them again and goes off and damages their reputation by spreading the bad word about them. And I think in terms of what Howard was saying about satisfaction surveys, if you have a good and ready satisfaction survey of 5 simple questions, that should be sent out as standard to all of your customers when they leave you, for you to or not. It's not just obviously realize a pass result that they get or not on their driving test and how safely they drive after that. It's also about the experience they have. You need to learn from that. But again, if you've got a silent killer customer, or potentially a silent killer, someone who has just gone and you've no idea why, find out why. Send them a satisfaction a survey, which is not as intrusive, I suppose, is saying, why did you leave me? It's just saying to them, you recently dealt with our driving school or had lessons with us. We just wanted you to let us know what your experience was. And that will give them an opportunity there to say, this is what I didn't like about you and this is why I left. So you get that positive learning from that experience. Next slide, I think. So what I find is that, as I said before, companies that have a clear complaints procedure and channel up front and have clear T&Cs about the products and services they're going to offer and how they will be offered can mitigate and manage complaints much more successfully. If there is no T&Cs about what you're going to deliver, or you have promised something in your T&Cs, or you've promised something in the sale of the product that the client has hold of, it's going to come back and bite you when you're dealing with complaints as well. So first of all, make sure that you set out in your T&Cs what you will and not offer, will and won't offer in terms of the product and its delivery, and make sure the client has read those and understood them. And when there is a problem with that, and it's clear in your T&Cs that the client's got the wrong impression or hasn't read the T&Cs and has a different impression of how things would be delivered, you can go back to the T&Cs then and say, you were given a copy of the T&Cs, it's very clear in here that that wouldn't be an outcome of this product. We wouldn't be delivering that to you, because often they'll complain about things that were never promised at the sale of the product. So that will help mitigate them as well. As I said, having a clear complaints policy, a clear refunds policy, all of those kind of things, a clear charging policy, because often it's about the money we fall out with people. So the client that's charged for their lesson and there's no refund given because they didn't let you know in less than 24 hours notice, if it's in your T&Cs that you're going to do that, and you've got to client, you sign at T&Cs that said you were clear that this is my way of operating. So there isn't really a cause of complaint here. So that's a top tip from us, making sure you have T&Cs in general are really important in any business, but in this context, they help mitigate and manage those complaints. Next slide, please, Tom. Customer complaints, can feel like a very negative topic, but I see them as an opportunity to get some feedback that's really useful, because a little like we talked about, having a marketing net out there with a hole in it, if you don't have an effective capture method for you, and you're losing customers because of complaints before the outset, not taking into account what people don't like about your brand or haven't enjoyed can be just as undermining as any positive marketing you do as well. Well, I don't care what they say, I've got plenty of other customers to go at. You do need to know why people are unhappy with your products and services. Otherwise, you'll continue doing something that makes more and you won't fix it, and it'll continue to be a blight in your business. And it actually could be a really easy fix or a simple misunderstanding that with better communication you could you get rid of as a problem. So look at your customer complaints, look at those satisfaction surveys that you do, identify any areas for service or product improvement, identify any improvement that's needed in policies and procedures. Was it not clear in terms and conditions that you have a late cancellation policy? Does that need to be right up front in your T&C so nobody can ignore it or embolden in some way? And improve customer communication, because communication or lack of is often at the core of many customer complaints and how they're resolved as well. It's critical that everybody in the business is aware of the process and is sharing in the what can we take from complaints to improve our business. So again, like you want to share your complaints processes and procedures with your employees and franchisees, you also want to share feedback with them from negative customer reviews and complaints, especially if it pertains to that franchisee or trainer's work or that employee's work as well. So yeah, listen to your customers, use their feedback. Apologies there for the ringer in the office coming on, and use that feedback positively, turn that negative into a positive to improve your products and services, and hopefully avoid future complaints and generate more business and more customers. I don't think there's enough time, because it is a really important subject about complaints to the DVSA to deal with this now. So I'm only going to go through this as a whistle stop of bullets, just to keep in mind in case anybody gets a complaint from the DVSA in the interim before we can do a specific DVSA complaints webinar. On our academy, there is a specific webinar where we talk about investigations by the DVSA, which are normally triggered by a pupil complaint or an examiner or somebody who's come into contact with you in your professional capacity. And that will deal with how a complaint becomes an investigation, what happens with a complaint, what happens in an investigation, happens if you appeal. I'd check out that webinar to see, I suppose, what is the consequences of complaints maybe going badly wrong, or malicious complaints, or genuine complaints that you're having to fight because they have happened. There's no getting away from it, but how do you mitigate that complaint? But we will do a separate webinar on the subject of complaints and how they're handled, and also malicious complaints, because they do form, unfortunately, the basis of quite a few investigations by the DVSA. And don't just think that the complaints are going to necessarily come from pupils. We've very heavily focused in this scenario today on customer complaints. But and really, we kind of fall into the mindset of thinking about the customer being a pupil, as in a 7 to 25-year-old, a fleet client, a driver that you're training for fleet purposes, or the client who's commissioning you to train a lot of people. But it could be a PDI if you're an audit trainer who has a complaint with your process. They're paying your money. They have a legitimate right. They're getting what should be getting. They might be motivated not just to complain to you, but to complain to DVSA, as you are a regulated provider of driver training, and this falls under that as well. It could be a franchise that you work for, a franchisor that complains about you to the DVSA because they have misgivings about you and what you're doing for their company, or they have issues with you because you left them, and they want to make a malicious complaint. And that is one that has come across my desk lately as well. So be aware that, not to be too negative about things, there are a lot of people that can cause a lot of trouble in your business, and not necessarily what you see as the core customer to your business. So we'll do a separate webinar on dealing with complaints to DVSA, but shorthand advice, if you are so unlucky as to have a complaint come your way, as soon as you are notified of a complaint that you think either may go to the DVSA, i.e. the customer is threatening to go to the DVSA, or you hear directly from the DVSA there has been a complaint against you, speak to us in confidence. Or if you're not a DIA member, speak to your national association, or you can give us a ring if you're not a member. We will never turn somebody away when they're in a serious situation like that. We'll try and give at least some advice to them. So speak to us as soon as you're notified of the complaint, so we can start to brief you on what are the next steps for you to take, so you don't take the wrong step, which might complicate your complaint further. If a pupil has made a complaint to the DVSA, they will investigate most complaints to some degree. So it is has some element of looking substantive to them. DVSA will notify you by a formal email or letter, or you could actually have a word in your ear if it's just something that's been highlighted to your local district test centre manager or an examiner. It could be that you're notified of it by the DDC. If someone's raised a formal complaint, you're going to hear from DVSA by letter or email formally. If somebody's just had a word in the shell, like of the local examiner at the test centre after their test, it might be that test centre manager or examiner uses their discretion to have a quiet word with you if it's not a very serious misconduct type complaint, and it can be resolved at that local level as well. You have the right, obviously, to, if you feel that it's being resolved at a local level, or an attempt is being made to resolve it at a local level, and you're not happy with that, you obviously have the right to raise it as a serious issue with DVSA. You're not happy with them about the fact it was raised in that context, and you'd like to be dealt with in a different way. If you can, and this is what we would do on your behalf, once DVSA are notified that we're representing you, ask for full details of the complaint as soon as you can, because you need to know what you're dealing with. You'll probably get the nature of the complaint, what you're allegedly having done. You might not always get the name of the complainant. Some people wish to prefer anonymous. DVSA can choose to also not divulge the name, because if they feel that they are able to draw more out of you at interview or in the investigative process by not divulging the name at that point, they will use their discretion not to do so. We do aggressively pursue a name being disclosed, but sometimes, unfortunately, we only get hold of the name of the complainant and more detail of the complaint on the day that you are sitting in a waiting room at a different test centre to your usual one, waiting to go into an interview under caution with the fraud and integrity team, which is not a pleasant experience. And that requires some very quick thinking on the part of myself and the member to be able to respond to that new knowledge and build a case for them. Now they know what the complaint is and who the complainant is. You can reasonably ask that the interview doesn't take place, say they've only told you at the interview, and that you have 20 minutes or so to confer with myself, whoever your representative is, about that case. But we always try to if you can't get it from DVSA, what we tend to do is I tend to take you through a cast your mind back process, where we talk about anybody leave you suddenly with no notice, and you weren't able to figure out why. Anybody you think might have a grudge against you, they failed a test, they were angry about it. You didn't necessarily do anything wrong, but could it be someone who's making a malicious complaint because they didn't get the result they wanted out of their test, or you wouldn't refund them for something? And even though they should have complained about not getting a refund, they might actually decide to complain to DVSA that you did something like touch them inappropriately. And unfortunately, we live in a society where people will sometimes do things like that. And that's why we end up sitting in an investigation for something you're not guilty of, but somebody's made a complaint and they have to investigate it. And it's a very distressing process for that ADI as well. So, these are the things that we see, unfortunately, when complaints go bad, as it were. So as soon as you do receive a complaint, just try and think and note down anybody that you have come into dispute with that might be minded to make a complaint against you, and make some notes about that particular pupil scenario. Don't, as I said, just think about the ones who've been overtly aggressive, disgruntled and complaining. It might be somebody who disappeared and you never heard from them again. I've had members very shocked that a very nice pupil who just suddenly stopped coming to lessons turns out to be the complainant, because that ADI never thought they had a problem with that pupil. As I said, sit there, write down what your perspective is on that complaint, what your notes tell you. If you've got good notes, if you keep diaries and notes on every pupil, get them out. If you keep customer records with notes on them, get those out, have a look at them, try and have an objective look at them from your view and theirs to see whether there is anywhere there could have been dispute that triggered this complaint, and start to outline your case against this complaint, because that will very much help us in that process as well. And as I said, seek advice and representation before you respond to DVSA at all. What I sometimes see is the member might have a very good case to mitigate their complaint or the investigation happening at all, or for an appeal, but actually it's what they say in mitigation, it's in their own emails and letters, in their own words, or how they behave in the process, not the original complaint, that can lead to the registrar seeking to remove them, or the appeal, upholding the DVSA's decision to remove rather than the appellant's. So, for example, we could be in a situation where what the ADI did was defensible or could be understood in some way, but then the ADI, despite thorough briefing by us and despite careful coaching, goes into an appeal or an investigation that day, shows no remorse, is aggressive, says something that makes the DVSA believe that actually they're not just guilty of this complaint, they're a habitual this and reason for them to decide to remove somebody and continue or investigate further to see if there's anything else that they can find. I think it's a classic case of shooting people in the foot, and that's why advice from your national association or a solicitor is really important in these cases, for it not to go badly wrong when it actually could have gone right. So that's that. I think that might merit a specific session, maybe with some case studies that we can drill up on that one at a later date as well. And complaints are still being handled, by the way. COVID did not make that one go away. And I think some people were surprised that they were having to attend interviews under caution, or that tribunals were happening during COVID. They did the lockdowns, and because if an instructor's a risk, it's important to deal with them as soon as possible, and also people who are waiting for investigations or the outcomes, or are waiting for appeal, if they are innocent, as it were, the extreme mental distress of going through that process is something that we all have to take seriously as responsibilities. So we want people to be dealt with as soon as possible. So that's why tribunals and investigations have been ongoing, so we can deal with the matter and close it down if there's no case to answer, so we don't distress that AGI any further. And tribunals continue today. They now are remote and done by video conference, much like you're talking to me now, with judges and clerks and representatives, but interviews under caution are still taking place in person as well, and so there's no let-up on that side of the regulator's role too. That's it really on complaints in this context. Is there any questions from anybody about things we've raised in this session? Got a Q&A, I think, down there. Okay, so Michelle says, we've got clear terms and conditions and refund policy on the website and in the booklet you send to customers. However, people demand refunds when not entitled and make threats about taking to social media if a refund is not given. How are these customers best dealt with? it goes back to a little bit, Michelle, to what I said before, that sometimes we've got to place a value judgment on a situation. And sometimes there is a scenario that, much as the principle of that person just being allowed unfettered to get away with murder by, threatening us and then being given something to go away, sometimes we do have to do things to neutralize somebody. And if it is in our power to easily give them something as a goodwill gesture and make it clear it's a goodwill gesture, we will often have people complain to us and they actually haven't got grounds to complain, but they are threatening, they are ringing staff constantly, they are taking up a huge amount of time, they have got the bit between their teeth and they're not going to let it go. We may make a goodwill gesture to refund them or offer them some compensation of some kind, because in that moment, we're judging that the value of our time to get on with the work that we really should be doing is greater than what we're giving in terms of the goodwill gesture. So there's that thing you can look at is it easy to make them go away? Although I don't like the principle of paying them off, is my time more important to focus on other things like this rather than dealing with this person who just won't go away until we give them something? Or do you stick to your guns and say, and very clearly state, these are our reasons for not giving you a refund. We're well from the outset, you agree to them. We will not give a refund in this circumstance. I'm sorry you feel that you've not had the experience you expected from this process. And maybe have just some standard text that you trot out on these occasions. Please be advised, as we were well within our rights to refuse a refund or not supply that service, if we do note comments are being made on social media, blah, blah, whatever they threatened, we will robustly defend our reputation and we will answer to those comments if they are erroneous, slanderous or defamatory. And we may consider taking legal action if we find that they are deliberately defamatory or slanderous. So there is a collection of wording you can use that is equally in a way as threatening as what they're trying to do. And we've had people do that. If you don't do what I want you to do, I'm going to tell everybody this. And they're foolish for doing it because A, they put it in an email and we can use that. And B, what they are saying has no foundation. They're unable to substantiate it. So therefore it is slander or defamation. And we just answer that we will robustly defend that. And we won't spend an awful lot of time in it. But if we see people doing that on social media channels, what they've threatened, we will go to those social media channels and we'll set out our case, and we're not afraid to do that. Just sometimes it's just not worth our time when we should be servicing more important member or industry needs than arguing with somebody who wants to hide behind a keyboard on Facebook and make problems. But if somebody does go out there and say, I'm an innocent victim and I did nothing wrong and the horrible DIA did something, we will go and defend that if there is not a grain of truth in it and it's actually the other way around. This person behaved abominably to us and not the other way around. So again, it's a balance. I think you take it on a case-by-case basis, but maybe have some wording that states your position, states why you won't give a refund, and deals with the threat of slander or defamation and what you will do if somebody does that. Does that help, Michelle, on your question? Hopefully it does. I'm always happy to take things one-on-one with people who want to email me or help with any wording like that. And if you've got a really sticky situation occurring, i.e. somebody's already out there slandering your company, defaming, then please come and speak to us and we can give you some tactics to deal with that. Before I joined DIA, what and still is, one of my jobs was dealing with reputation management for financial services firms, doctors, dentists, government bodies, all those kind of things. And whilst most of PR is a happy job and you're sending positive news, one of my specialisms unfortunately became dealing with skeletons in closets and reputations gone wrong and rescuing them, all those kind of things. So I don't think we've got any further questions for now. You know where we are if you've got a particular complaints issue. The help desk is always someone you should go to if there's a complaint against you, you're dealing with a serial or aggressive complainer, or you want to complain about a goods or service that you've encountered as well in your professional capacity. That's a really good source of advice and support, is support@driving.org for any of those kind of queries. I'm going to let Howard finish off with the promos.
Yeah, Tom will be doing that.
Sorry, Tom, this is Tom's moment to shine.
Yeah, that's okay, thanks. Yeah, just say we've got a lot of courses up running at the moment, so have a look at the academy. We've got our Sounders Check virtual classrooms. We've got dates in July and August, so we've got day sessions and evening sessions for those now. And we've also got our applied coach approach course, safeguarding and mindfulness as well. So we've got dates set for those, all on the academy, or you can give me a call in the office on the number on there.
Cool.
So yeah, as Carly said, if you've got any queries or anything like that, just contact us at support@driving.org.
Just a quick thing on the Howard alluded to before, that with things like standards check and talking about the standards checks course, we're shortly launching check. Some of those courses we referred to there, packaged up with some one-on-one coaching and even an opportunity to go out on a mock standards check or part 3 with one of our highly professional driving examiners as well, which is great to get that trial run at it and get some feedback as well. But what that course will deal with as well is the fact that DVSA is increasingly, as Howard has alluded to today, looking at more than just how you perform in that hour. They will look at your performance on the register, i.e. any complaints against you, any issues with previous standards check, and they will look at a much wider degree of performance metrics and data derived from your performance and your pupils in the future. So, it might seem that complaints are in some way irrelevancy standards check, though highly relevant to you remaining on the register, but actually increasingly all of these things are going to be important in how the regulator scrutinizes individual trainers. But yeah, thank you for attending. I hope that helped answer some of the questions you had about handling complaints. I hope it gave you food for some procedures, mapped out some kind of customer undertaking that you make with the customer about how you handle them and giving them confidence that you'll deal with their complaints well, and a little bit of psychology thrown in about the types of customer and how to handle them when they complain as well. But hopefully see you soon, and hope you remain complaint free, unfettered, and able to go about your business in a busy market at the moment. Thanks everyone then. Bye bye.